My name is Mark, and I'm a contributor to the Optimism Collective. We're here today with Tabish, because Tabish has been hacking on native interop. So basically, the idea is we're building the Superchain, and we want to create this horizontally scalable blockchain network where we basically allow for chains to seamlessly interact and interoperate with each other. We're targeting 2-second cross-chain transactions with our first release to production. Then the goal is to enable application developers to scale their application just by adding new chains to the cluster. And this is going to require rethinking how we build applications and how we architect smart contracts. And Tabish here has been, doing some early experimentation on this, and it's super cool. Tabish, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. So, hi Mark, and hi everyone. I'm Tabash. I've been like a software engineer for like now 6 years. Been in this space, like in the Web3 crypto space since like early 2020s. Started as a smart contract engineer at BadgerDAO, writing yield farming strategies and like optimizing yield for our walls and that. And then yeah, like got more involved in the DeFi side of things and worked at Aave building like the first version of the Go stable coin. And like yeah, personally like I'm uh for me also like I'm a personally DeFi, like power DeFi user, so DeFi power user. So
Do you mind telling us just a little bit about the biggest problems that you face today as a DeFi power user?
so as a DeFi power user, the first thing I look for, like whenever I like, because obviously like money is a very important aspect, right? We don't want to lose it or like spend a lot of it and keep it in a safe place. So and and then as a DJ and DeFi user, I want to get the maximum yields possible from it, right? So what I as a DeFi power user every time I look is, if I want to like let's say just keep my assets somewhere safe, I I just search everywhere wherever there is the highest lending rates. I do a cross-chain transaction to that chain, and then I deposit on that chain. But like the problem with this approach is like I'm not the only one seeing this. It's like it's all open. So like everyone, it's on chain, right? So everyone is seeing this. And what happens in lending protocols, it's like uh initially the interest rates are very high before like someone sees this opportunity, and as let's say like 50 million, 100 million come into the pool, the lending rates drop down, and I'm like, oh no, like now there's a better opportunity on the other chain. So now I do a cross-chain transaction. Like I like take withdraw my funds from that uh like the same protocol, basically, not a different protocol. I just withdraw my funds from the same protocol, bridge my assets, and then again deposit the same like in the same protocol on a different chain to get better yields. So that's my experience as a basically just lending. But in case of borrowing, I want to like not pay high interest rates, and I just want to get the lowest interest rates possible. But what happens in that case is wherever there are lowest interest rates, people go and borrow from that chain, from that protocol always. And that spikes, like increases the market utilization of that asset on that chain, and it spikes interest rates very high. So, users are in this constant uh shifting, playing, and jumping from one chain to another, finding the best rates, wasting a lot of their time, money, and yeah, it's like a full-time 24/7 job, like because the crypto never closes, right? So
I see, I see. So bridging between chains. We know historically, bridges introduce like a lot of risk. There's been really big bridge hacks. That's one thing
yeah,
that we're trying to solve with native interoperability is reducing that risk of bridging. Cool. So can you tell me a little bit about the project that you're working on? Um, you're working on this project called RiftLend, right? And you've been hacking with Supersim. Do you mind telling us a little bit about these things?
yeah. So. I've been like hacking on a product called RiftLend, which is an experimentation on the Supersim using Supersim Introps. So we are currently like building a lending platform which offers like with using like these Introps primitive, we offer like unified access to interest rates. So like we have same interest rates across all the chains wherever our protocol is deployed. And one thing important is we empower the users. So irrespective, like so Interop is this very powerful thing. Like irrespective of whatever chain they are on, the users can initiate the transaction from that chain, and it would like use Interops in the underlying, and like it would like if they want to like let's say deposit on like on another network, it would initiate the transaction from another network without the user knowing like what network are they on. So it basically abstracts away the chain out for the users, giving them a centralized exchange type experience in a DeFi manner, like no centralized entity. Like, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So Supersim is basically a tool that allows developers to start hacking on OP Stack Interop today. We're still working on developing OP Stack Interop. We shipped a DevNet at Edgelana recently, right before DevCon. And but because we want to enable people to start hacking today and experimenting today, that's why SuperSim exists. So yeah, and then just so I understand, you have been developing RiftLend, and you said one of the main features is that you can send a transaction originating on any chain and basically making a contract call on another chain.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really powerful feature. This is basically bridging. And, a lot of people talk about this as chain abstraction. Yeah, I'm curious what your take on this is, because it kind of feels like we're moving away from chains completely and moving to this world where it's like this just like a network. Yeah, like do you see like how do you see this playing in with like the future of like chain abstraction?
Yeah, so definitely, like, giving a bit of background and of like, let's say, a bit of nostalgia to people. Like, so what happened is like initially in the DeFi space, people like the DeFi boom happened, everyone was using Ethereum, the block space was scared, there were gas wars, there were like $1,000 transactions happening, and like people were like going crazy. Then like over the period of time as like the DeFi boom was going on, L2s got introduced, and like proto what Ethereum protocols, like the protocols deployed on Ethereum did is like without any like modification to the app, they just deployed on the other L2s. Like so this thing of bridges, like a middleman came into the picture, where now how would users get the funds to the other chain, right? So this like an intermediary bridges kind of thing came in, which is like yeah, which is like a security risk also, and like how they operated and all of that.
One thing
Okay.
that I see being really powerful is like the user experience is basically upgraded so that people don't need to change their network.
Yeah.
Um, I think right now there's just like this massive problem where there's too many networks. Like whenever you go into your wallet, you need to like go to the switcher and switch your network, and then people accidentally send their funds to an address on the wrong chain. If they're depositing to an exchange, maybe the exchange doesn't integrate the network that the user deposited on, but it was like the same address, and the address is valid on both chains. So yeah, there's like still like a lot of problems to solve, I think, at the UI layer. Things like network specific addresses can help a
Yeah.
lot here. So I think we have a long way to go still, but I think that we're
Yeah.
making like a lot of good progress when it comes to like user experience.
So, like building on interops, I would say is like for in terms of a user perspective is like removing all the chains, and like the user like wouldn't know like on which chain he's on, or like or that, and they could have assets in on any chain possible, and they could deposit on any chains, they could lend on any chains, they could withdraw the assets on any chain. And like I think that's what
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about one of the features that you're working on with RiftLend is this cross-chain flash loan. How does that work?
we call we call them internally as safe multi-chain flash loans. So so like I'll talk about the more about the word safe, but it's more like what happens is in flash loans, basically, like a user originates a transaction, he can get like any amount of collateral from the pool without like depositing any money in it. And like if he returns the transaction, like if he returns the assets in the same transaction, so like it's atomic, he'll have to just pay a very small fee, like let's say 10 BPS, 5 BPS, or something like that. How liquidators and like arbitrageurs currently work in this multi-chain world is to arbitrage something, they would run multiple transactions on each of the chains, and maybe arbitrage the value of, let's say, ETUSDC or on Uniswap to get it equal across all the chains. But with Reflend, what we enable is multi-chain flash loan initiation, and then those flash loan transactions are sent to the specific chain and they're executed atomically on each chain. So uh, the borrowers can initiate multi-chain like flash loan transactions from any chain they wish, and get the flash loans in the second, basically the transaction that happens atomically on each of the chains. So it's not cross-chain in terms of it's not cross-chain atomic in sense of like it's not cross-chain atomic, but it's like atomic to local, like it's atomic to the local transaction that is being executed. So the flash loaner would have to pay back the loan given uh, in the same transaction happening on that chain. So it then depends on the security of that chain and like the trust assumptions there. Like
Yeah, one of the design goals of native interop is to have shared security between all of the chains. So if you trust the chain that you're on, then you also would like the same trust assumptions are like you don't have any extra trust assumptions. It's really like a stage one plus roll up with a single sequencer or is really your trust assumptions. Can you tell me a little bit about the challenges that you faced when building this and how you overcame it?
uh, one of the challenges, or like let's say, we didn't use flash loans we could build to its full capabilities, because because the underlying currently, like like the super like Interop introduces this thing called superchain assets, right, which can be transferred freely across chains without a bridge. But these superchain assets are currently not adopted in other protocols. So like one thing I really wanted to add to this was set a target chain where they could get all the funds at once. But but this wouldn't be possible because like we would have to bridge all the underlying, basically let's say we have USDC, we will have to bridge it to the target chain and then uh like give it to the user basically, and it wouldn't happen in like let's say in let's say 2 block time, in 2 blocks time basically. So uh, that's one thing that limited us. But I think what in the future I see is, as future superchain assets are widely adopted across all the chains, like other protocols use it for deposits and users can use it freely. What these flash loans would get more powerful in a sense where we could set like a chain ID and like get huge amounts of funds from like get this all unified liquidity at once to like do something.
All right, can you tell me a little bit about how native interop in building RiftLend into it, how you see it enabling experiences that are more like centralized exchanges?
Uh, yeah, so I'm thinking about this analogy of like in real world when we go to a bank, you just you just deposit USD in your account and they just give you one interest rate across all of it, right? So they don't show you like a list of chains where they have deposited their assets to earn interest rates and then like do that. So what native interop enables us is to unify these interest rates across all the chains, which so irrespective of like wherever you deposit on our contracts on whichever chain you deposit, you will get a single interest rate for like lending and borrowing. And the second feature is with native interops, which have like the Superchain bridge, token bridge, we enable users to like uh, withdraw, like borrow. Let's say, let me give you a small example. So let's say I deposited on OP mainnet, but I want to use the base chain to trade some meme coins now. I want my asset there. So like now it's like I have to do cross-chain transfer and all of that. But with native interops, the user can directly borrow on any chain he wishes. So irrespective of wherever he lent, and like same thing with repay and withdraw. Like so that's a really like I think it empowers the users to, like it really puts in like the power in the hands of the users and like yeah.
At a centralized exchange, when there's demand, and there's high volatility, lots of usage, the gas price doesn't go up. The
Yeah.
fees like kind of stay the same, right? And that's part of the idea of with native interop is that you can horizontally scale your application so that when demand goes up, when there's more users, then you can kind of scale up the amount of block space.
Yeah, and interestingly, what we could have is like spin up alternate like instantaneous blockchains in the future to maybe redirect that user flow. Or maybe what would happen is, let's say the demand is high on OP mainnet, we could route those transactions deposits to base because we have this unified interest rates across all, and we will sync reserve states across all the chains. So the users don't have to worry about this high gas prices and all of that ever. Like,
Yeah, that is the
yeah,
long-term goal of the
yeah.
super chain. Cool. You had a diagram. Do you want to go through that?
So I'll just share my screen. Yeah. So like this diagram shows like what's the current landscape in the lending, what's the current lending landscape like. So let's say we have like Ethereum and users want to like lend and borrow. uh this diagram depicts like approx like like imaginary rates across all the chains, but what we see is like they are different basically. So let's say I'm a lender and I'm seeing now, right, base has the highest lending APY, I go deposit there. But as I said previously, it's the same. Like the as more deposits come in, I'll have to shift to another network, and yeah, yeah, this is a bit like game, and like yeah, whoever has lots of time and money is wins in this. Like it's not, it's like a, what do you say, that game? Like it's yeah, it's not favorable for everyone. Like so, what we enable users is what we do is like we have one lending rate and one borrowing rate basically across all this chains, and this is enabled by native interops. So what happens is whenever there is like, let's say there's a borrow on OP mainnet, there's a deposit on mode, there's a, let's say, a repay on base or something like that, we take the changes that occurred in the reserve locally and we sync it across all the instances where a contract is deployed on all the chains, so that we can get this holistic approach of like one unified interest rates. And like yeah, so like it really frees, like users are very stress free, like there's just one interest rate and all. And with this, it enables unified liquidity also. So like let's say there's a huge borrow from base of, let's say, $50 million, our borrow rate wouldn't spike so much because we are maintaining this complete reserve, complete like reserve state basically, which takes into account all the assets across all the chains. So like there'll be no borrow rate spikes. The lending APY would also be quite like averaging out. Like we'll have to see how it works in real in practice, but I predict, like I think it would go like the average of all the chains basically. So, and interestingly, like we could play with incentives also. So like if someone gives us incentives, we could share it with everyone. Like so it's like you don't have to be on that chain, and yeah, we could really do some interesting like things with it. Like
Yeah. I mentioned previously that, to achieve this goal of like the North Star of the superchain where your application automatically scales with every new chain that's interoperable, we need to come up with some new design patterns. And you've been working on this Interop standard library. Can you tell me a little bit about that library and how you've been developing it?
My idea of like so now I like in the current landscape, it's like let's say I want to deploy on multiple chains, and like let's say uh I have my governance on one chain, which sets an owner, which sets the parameters, which sets pool admins or something like that. In the current scenario, what happens is the governance operates on one chain, and then there are multi-sigs on the other chains, which or they send a cross-chain message, and then there are multi-sigs which sign, and like it's a very hectic process. Like so for developers also, or like other protocols also do is like they deploy their own cross-chain governance bridges wherein the governance sends message to a governance bridge and the governance bridge then makes a transaction on the next chain. But it's a quite lengthy process and in situations wherein like in so we have developed like I'll go to it, but we have developed like the super possible kind of stuff. So if if in like emergency situations you need to pause a contract, the time is very critical, right? You need, and with this approach you'll have to go to all the chains, pause and all. But my idea of like developing interop STDs to like simplify the developer experience, the deployment experience, and like the operating experience developers have on in a multi-chain future, basically. Like so, currently, like we have like three contracts in the interop STD, which is like super ownable. So like super ownable enables uh like so if there's like let's say you have a governance compound like brow governance on one chain, the governance can update the owners and permissions on one chain, and the permissions are in the next block instantaneously updated on all the chains, and you don't have to do any work. Like there's no multi-sigs involved. It's very secure, and like it because it's built on native interops, you have the security uh like uh like the security backing of like the validate message of the cross sell to inbox and all of that. So it really like secures the whole stack and like and does it in a decentralized way, so like no multi-sigs and all of that. And like similarly with super possible, so like if there's an emergency, you pause the contracts on one chain, in the next block immediately they'll be paused on all the chains. So you could like in a war room kind of in a war room kind of a situation, it's very useful like to have that thing. And the third kind of
Yeah.
thing that developers mostly do is like the proxy upgrades, basically. So like if they want to upgrade a contract, they would like uh they can upgrade it on all chains at once. Yeah.
Yeah, those are very, very useful. Like we do really need to figure out what these design patterns are, and then just have a library that any developer can import, and then everything just works. Kind of like how Open Zeppelin defined a lot of like the, patterns that are really common today. For all the developers out there that are interested in RiftLend and building on OP Stack native interoperability, but are unsure where to start, Tabish, do you have any advice that you'd give to these people? How can they get involved in contributing or learning more?
Yeah, so I think the best way to start is like watching the YouTube tutorial of the tic-tac-toe app and then diving into like the Supersim repo, trying to run it locally, and then like playing with the ERC20 starter kit which is there, and playing in the UI, doing some cross-chain transactions, seeing how the cross-chain L2 inbox operates, the L2 to L2 like cross-chain domain messenger operates, and yeah, then after that then the world like hopping into the specs or like of interops, and then the world is a playground basically. you can you can do anything like
Awesome. Yeah, all it takes is a little imagination and an
yeah.
open mind, believing what's possible. Supersim is all open source. It's on GitHub. Please come contribute and play around with it. We're gonna continue shipping Interop. The code is all open source. It's free software. The specs are online. specs.optimism.io. And if you have any questions, comments, please follow up post them on Twitter, and we'll engage with you. Tabish, thank you so much for coming and telling us about RiftLend today. And
Yeah.
excited to see where it goes.